Welcome to ProjectME, the podcast. I'm your host, Tiffany Carter, the founder of ProjectME, multimillionaire entrepreneur, former TV newscaster, money-making expert, female empowerment speaker, and self-proclaimed office supply addict. My mission is to take the mystery out of making big money. Every week on ProjectME, the podcast, I'll share success tips, strategies, and stories from other entrepreneurs, experts, and millionaires, showing you exactly how you can achieve your most exceptional life. Now let's get to it. Welcome to ProjectME with Tiffany Carter, the podcast and posse. I'm your host, Tiffany, and we have a special guest on today that is going to clear up some things around this whole divine femininity, masculine energy stuff that I know you're seeing out there that's trending. It's kind of like, what does that even mean? And some people are very triggered and offended by it. Kind of like, oh, are you saying if you're in your feminine energy, then that doesn't mean that you can run a successful business and you're supposed to be soft and soft-spoken? There's a lot of misconceptions around it. So we're going to clear those up. Plus, we're going to dish on all things divorce, pivoting, PR. It's going to be, really some serious, straight up girl talk that's going to be highly entertaining. So I brought on Lauren Salaun. She is a PR and visibility expert. So she has a whole separate company for that. But now she is specializing in helping professional women step into the art of being in their divine feminine energy, so they can work less and tap into more of their creativity and enjoy their life and their businesses more. I mean, how many of you started a business because you wanted to be in control of your schedule, have the freedom of cash, have the freedom of time, have the freedom of creative energy, and then to find you've created your own self-imposed prison where it's actually fucking harder than having a conventional job? I know,
gosh.
Right? I did
Yes.
that with my first business. I talk about it all the time, where I was like hysterical going, what the hell? It was easier for me to be an executive in pharmaceuticals, which was like really demanding in a different way than it was for me to be a business owner. But I also had no fucking idea what I was doing. So you did that too?
Oh, absolutely. I went from working in crisis PR in the healthcare industry. So different worlds, but similar kind of energy in that. So again, crisis PR, if we think about what's happening in the world right now, like I'm sure that
this is crisis PR.
Yeah, I'm sure that last PR agency that I work for has been insanely busy this past year. So we were hired to help the biggest hospitals and healthcare systems, put out major fires when shit hit the fan, right? And so always an insane amount of work. Not only was I working like 60 to 80 hours a week, but the workload, like the actual work we were doing, was very high stress too, because literally our clients are like, help save our hospital, so not chill work environment. And back then, when I'm like working crazy hours and I don't have time to do my own laundry, to do my own grocery shopping, that kind of stuff, like barely get into the gym. And I'm a former competitive athlete, so I need to break a sweat, like for my mental health as well. And so back then, it was so easy to blame my like work-life balance, quote unquote, on a boss, right? On my company that I worked for. And then I remember when I finally went out on my own, maybe a year in or something. And I was able to like bring my income back up pretty quickly and have great clients and all this kind of stuff. But I was working like such an employee. And then the like real kicker for that, when I realized like, oh shit, was I looked up and I'm like, wait a second, I'm working like the same way nonstop. My clients are freaking calling me at 10 p.m. I'm so stressed, like all this stuff. And I'm like, there is nobody to blame but myself. I am the problem. I was
You're the common denominator.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit.
And when you got to that point, what did you decide to do? Because I think we all get to this first stage where we realize, okay, I don't like this. This isn't working. But were you in enough discomfort and pain yet to go, I can't keep operating like this?
Yes. And I honestly, that was like maybe a year, 2 years into running my own business. And I was having a conversation with a girlfriend of mine who happens to be a phenomenal life coach and everything. And I was telling her, I just need more space. I never have enough time. I'm just like inside it. Like even on days when I don't have a ton to do, I don't feel like there's any room emotionally, mentally, like all this stuff, let alone in my schedule. And she goes, Lauren, if I told you tomorrow that you could not do any work whatsoever, nothing, and you had to sit on the couch and watch movies all day long, how would you feel? And I was like, ugh, worthless. She's like, I was like, oh, you bitch. I was like, no. And so that was such a wake-up call for me that I had never even imagined. One, this was when I was really starting to learn about more personal development and stuff like that, and had been in it maybe for like a year, but like I didn't know what like feminine, masculine energy was. And like, I wasn't thinking about like worthiness and that kind of stuff. And so I had never thought about how my worth was so attached to what I was doing, how much I was doing, how busy I was, all my accomplishments, like that sort of thing. And I was like, oh crap. Yeah. If I feel like I'm a pathetic human, if I take a whole day off versus like feeling amazing when I'm crushing a bunch of shit on the to-do list, like that's a problem. Okay, there's some like deep inner work to do. And from that, I actually jumped into a very intensive, like emotional intelligence leadership training that was so powerful and transformative for me. And it's still like, sometimes when you learn the things and you're like a stubborn kind of human, takes a little bit of time for you to actually put it into play in a really effective way. So yeah.
Why do you think it is? Because everyone listening's like, oh, Tiffany talks about this all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a stubborn ass Virgo. It takes me a long time to learn things, and I can hear it. And I even and believe it too. Like, it's not like the teachers I've had, I don't believe. I know there needs to be a change, but to actually implement it when it's so hardwired, those beliefs are so deep for me. And I actually like went to a program, like 12-step for workaholism.
Wow.
Like there's actual 12 steps for it. Like it's a problem. It was my drug because I had an exercise addiction too. So I picked two socially acceptable drugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, you work out so much. And
you're so busy.
Right. And people praise you for being a dedicated, hard worker. Corporate America loves people like that. Why do you think it is that there are a lot of women that are wired like that, like whether they are a stay-at-home mom, which I believe is the hardest job, and they're doing a million different tasks, or they're a stay-at-home mom and a business owner, whatever it is. Why is this busy thing such a thing for women? Because when I watch, I mean, I've dated the United Nations, so like I have a large pool of resources to base studies off of. But of all the people,
a lot of market research,
right? There's a lot. And I have to tell you, all these guys, like they had no problem, like chilling, like having a beer and like doing jack shit all day. And like, these were guys one was a very well-known surgeon. Like, I mean, there's a lot of broke ones too, but I mean, it's all over the place. But why is that?
That is a great question. And I think in part of the the patriarchy, right? Whatever is in part of that, right? To feel like we as women are on the same level as like the men in our industry or whatever it is, we have to like work harder than them, right? To prove ourselves. And I know for me, my workaholicism, however you say that, was so rooted again in my lack of self-worth, and my overachieverness was coming from that place of needing to prove myself. And for me, it goes back to like, how I look and getting attention since I can remember for my looks. And so needing to, I'm going to be the best at every single thing. And I'm going to do every single sport and every club and do all the AP and honors classes and like do all the things, right? Nonstop, because I'm not just pretty. I'm smart too. I'm not just pretty. I'm good at sports also. Like that kind of shit was so much of it for me. So even in my career, needing to be like, oh, well, there's more work to do. And I could get a raise, or I could get a promotion or something like that. Okay, I'm going to just do nonstop. And so it's almost, I don't know where that ingrained, like feeling like we have to do more than men to be on that equal footing.
Yeah. It's like, if we aren't constantly doing, then we're wasting time. We're lazy. I mean, it goes really quick to black and white thinking. It's like, if we aren't, that whole "you're a human doing, not a human being" thing.
Yes.
It's like I did that. I was modeled that. My mom is still that person. I mean, she never stops. I was raised with that mentality, so I know it was picked up there. How did you feel on the times that you did, so to speak, rest? Like, I bet my guess is the only time you rested was when you went on trips, like vacation.
Yeah. When I was still working for somebody else, when I was on vacation, but it was like either 0% or 110%. So when I would take time off, it was like, fuck you. Don't you dare even text me for the login for something, even if I'm the only person who has it, right? Because this is my vacation time, and because I was feeling like I was sacrificing so much of my life, that like taking a weekend or like a long weekend or a week or something for myself was like, don't you dare like step into my time. I give you so much of my time.
You were resentful.
Yeah. Oh, so much resentment. Yeah. And so yes, it was when I actually had like a vacation and would be like, fuck you, don't email me, that kind of attitude. And then when I started working for myself, I would work kind of all the time, including weekends. And after a couple years, and I left my last job PR agency in 2014. So it's been a while now, which is so exciting. And it took me a couple of years to even just take like a half day off on the weekends. And I started to notice that even when I wanted to work during that time, like if I was like, okay, I'm going to do 2 hours of work in the morning. And even if later in the day, I was like, oh, I just want to keep working on this, I made myself not, because I knew that even though it was the sort of thing where like, you can't keep sprinting like nonstop forever. Right. Like, and so even if you want to like take that little pause, because then you can jump right back in and keep sprinting. Right. And so I started seeing that once I literally like forced myself to take more time. And part of that was because I had gotten married. And so I wanted to spend time with my husband and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, if he's working a normal like 9 to 5 type job and has the weekends off, I don't want to be sitting in the apartment working all the time. So part of it was so that I had more time for us, and started to really see, even if I want to go nonstop, or I feel like I need to keep working nonstop all weekend long and be plugged in and stuff like that, when I actually take like maybe all day Sunday off, I feel so excited on Monday to get started again. Right. And so energized again. So it started with like those little baby steps of time. And like, now I take like the whole weekend off pretty much.
You're like, now I basically like don't want to do anything.
I work like 20 hours a week now.
Right. Right. And that's what I joke about, because it's like, I always say, like, you want to hire someone who's the self-proclaimed laziest business coach, because I know how to do everything the easy way. Like, I don't want to work like that, but it almost like the pendulum has swung the other way, where it's like, hey, I'm chilling all the time.
Can I work hard anymore?
Right, exactly.
Do I have the gear?
Like,
Do I have the grinded out gear anymore? I don't know. Yes, I know it's there, but
when people would ask you, the old you, I always like to say like the 1.0 version of you or whatever. When people would ask you, oh, funny, my mom, of course, is calling while I'm doing this interview. Those of you who know my
mom's my mom, so inspiring, such an independent, like powerful, badass woman. And like, she's like flips properties left and right and will be like tiling a whole bathroom herself and all this stuff.
That's
and I'm
my
like,
mom too. Right.
Mom, don't you aren't you tired? Like, don't you want someone to, she's like, I actually really enjoy it.
No, I love it.
Right.
No, I love it. And it's like, well, no wonder where we got it from. So when people would ask you how you were doing, the old you, do you remember how you used to respond? When they'd be like, oh, how you doing? How was your weekend?
It was probably like, oh my gosh, I'm so busy, just have like so much on my plate, like that kind of shit. And now I just talked about this in an Instagram post like 2 days ago or something, where when people message me now and are like, oh my gosh, I know you're so busy, I read it and I go, where are you getting this from? Because I'm not. And I like get triggered and want to get defensive because I'm like, no, I'm not anymore. I used to be. Leave me alone. And I rarely feel too busy now, which is amazing. Ever. I can't think about when I felt like super overwhelmed with work or like I had too much on my plate and stuff like that. And it has been because I have very intentionally carved out so much more space in my life so that I can work so I don't have to work like 8, 9, 10, 12, whatever hour days, or like I don't have to work full days Monday through Friday, that kind of stuff. And so now like I'm like, oh, there's some work I still get to do around people saying
the
I know you're
work
busy.
the work never really ends, does it?
I'm like, don't call me busy. I'm not.
It really
intentional.
It never really ends.
No.
What mindset shifts? What are some key shifts? And I'm sure you're still working on them daily because this stuff is so ingrained. I'm sure it still pops up. What key mindset shifts did you have to make in order to like almost settle your nervous system into trusting that you can still be financially sound and successful and reach your goals by doing less?
Oh, this is such a good question. And I unfortunately don't have a really great answer that is like, oh, do XYZ sort of thing. So for me, I started practicing more mindfulness and meditation years ago, even though I thought it was ridiculous. And I would actually there were many times where I'd set a timer, like a self-guided meditation app or something. And I'd set it for like 5 minutes, and I'm like, okay, we can do this for 5 minutes. And I'd be like, I think my phone must have broken. And I look at it, it's like 90 seconds. I was like, oh gosh. So it started like baby steps with that, just like being like, you know what? Some people are saying this is a good idea. I'll give it a try. But for me, it was back to that like deep worthiness work. So that involved like healing a lot of childhood wounds, like seeing where that overachiever, perfectionist, workaholic stuff came from. So that's like not an easy answer per se, but a lot of work around worthiness. And I needed a lot of people it's interesting because I never felt like I was insecure. I've never really felt like that. And when I was so stuck in that like workaholic, prove myself through what I do space, there's an insecurity to that, right? If I feel like I'm nothing without my accomplishments and my resume and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I needed people also to say it to my face a lot. Like I needed a lot of affirmation from others that like, I'm safe just as I am and just how I be. Right. So I needed to hear that a lot too. Like in those, in that program I did, like that was really supportive for me to be like, oh, wait, okay, for real? Oh, like, okay, like to help me ground that and lock that in for myself. But honestly, like it didn't click until I really, this isn't like a solution to it, but it didn't really click for me until in like the most powerful way until 2019, which is during that entire year, I experienced depression, which like I'm no stranger to anxiety. And I'm sure like you can relate to that as well. Like I've dealt with a lot of anxiety, right? We're moving way too fast, all that kind of stuff, but had never experienced depression. And in 2019, I was doing fitness competing and stuff like that as well, and was dealing with some very chronic nerve pain. Basically, it was like sciatica almost, but chronic nerve pain that prevented me from sitting down for more than like 5 minutes without pain. So I literally, my body was like, no, bitch, you cannot sit down and be a workaholic. Nope, not going to allow it. And then also depression that same year. I'm like, interesting how these things happened at the same time. Yeah. So dealing with depression too, which I felt so much not like myself. I was a very high functioning depressed person, like didn't realize I was depressed until probably like halfway through it and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't feel like myself. I wasn't inspired. I wasn't motivated to work. I wasn't excited about my business. And 2019, I call it my gap year. I took a break from my business as the main thing. And I needed to literally sometimes to actually learn the lesson, you have to run into the wall at 100 miles an hour, like 15 times. Right. And so for me, like my body is like, no, you cannot sit at the computer all day long. And my energy, mentally, emotionally, all that was like, and you're not going to have any energy if you want to sit down anyhow. Like you're not going to want to do any other work anyhow. And so once I started, and so that year I was doing actually a lot of in-person personal training for many reasons. Wanted to mix it up. I was doing a lot of fitness stuff for myself, for my own hobbies and passions and stuff like that. So I was like, you know what, we're going to do this. It's easy. It has a clear start and end time. Like I get to be in person, all of that. And so once I started coming out of the depression and being like, oh, I could work for like 2 hours. Like I'm actually excited to do that, or 3 hours or something. I would have these pockets of time, very limited time. And so I learned how to be so much more ninja, right, with my time and all the shit that was like because my way of like procrastination is adding more unnecessary crap.
Like interesting. I never thought about that one.
Yeah. And
so you're saying you would procrastinate on the stuff that maybe scared you to do or was technically more of higher value by filling your schedule with a bunch of shit.
Yep. I would do like, okay, this is the main thing. You know what? Let's do 25 other things today and leave the one thing that has to get done to the end of the day. And so that no matter what, come 9 o'clock, I haven't done the one thing that I actually had to do. Now I'm going to work until 10. Right. So it's like that sort of thing where I just create extra work and extra projects and like, oh, well, why don't I make a freebie about this? Or why don't I do this? Or why don't I do this? Like creating all these like backup plans also, like not focusing just on the main thing. And so once I, was dealing with depression and coming out of it, I was like, there is no time for the extra bullshit. What is the main thing and what has to get done? What is mission critical? Do it. And then you're done. And so I was able to, one, see my depression as such a gift because it taught me that lesson of like, one, slowing down, listening to my body, reconnecting with my body, like healing stuff, dealing with a lot of stuff that was creating that. But then it also taught me how to be so much more purposeful with my time and my energy and not add a ton of extra crap in. So once I was back to feeling like myself, I didn't go back to working crazy long hours and adding a ton of stuff. I'm like, no, this is the main goal. This is the thing. And that's how we're going to get there. Do we do it? We did it. Okay, we're done for the day. Great. And so it wasn't there. There's no one particular like mindset shift. Unfortunately, like, yes, working on the worthiness stuff, but I had to like be literally like incapacitated to force myself to actually follow through with the actions.
I mean, that's how all of us are really wired. I mean, out of even just being somewhat uncomfortable, most people don't change.
Yeah.
We have to be a disaster. And I'm wired similarly to you where it's my body that I mean, I ruptured my spine kickboxing and I was forced, like I couldn't move, like I had a similar situation where it was like, God knew, the universe knew that I couldn't do it. My ego was so powerful that like I had to be, I had to be taken down. So you're doing a pivot right now into focusing more on this whole embracing divine feminine energy, putting in more feminine energy into your business and creating that balance, because look at how much it's transformed your life. And we often teach what we've experienced, which is beautiful. Yeah. And this is a very trendy, sexy topic, right? Like divine feminine.
I know.
And
goddess energy.
And exactly. And then like all the things I joke about with Sarah, the spiritual influencer. So what in the fuck does it actually mean?
I love that. Cause oh my goodness. 5 years ago, if you're like, oh, you'll be like pulling cards and you'll have crystals in your house, I would have been like, shut up. I'm like, yeah, freak, and I'm like, oh, I'm pulling all these cards. Like, is there a crystal in my sports bra? Probably. I don't know. So like, if we're thinking, so men and women, we all have masculine energy and feminine energy. And there's like healthy manifestations of both and wounded, manifestations of both. And so masculine energy is typically the more like out energy. So right, push energy. So like focus, confidence, logical, stability, clarity, assertiveness, that kind of stuff. When it gets wounded, it can be very controlling, very aggressive, very like dominating. Whereas feminine energy is going to be more emotional, more intuitive, more like flow, creative, surrender, stillness and space. And wounded feminine is going to be codependent and inauthentic, insecure, those sorts of things. And so this is something that I dove into really like the last 2 years more, because I wouldn't have like even known what this shit was before that. And it's important to see too, like as a woman, right? I shouldn't be only in my feminine, right? Like we get to learn how to play between both of those energies. And so one of the ways that like this shows up in my life as an entrepreneur a lot is in how I schedule my time during the week. So like Mondays are typically like CEO masculine days. So I'm checking in with my team. I'm delegating. I'm going through the to-do list. I'm like, mapping it all out, strategy, checking in with clients, like very transactional, a lot of quicker tasks. Whereas Thursdays, for example, are podcast recording days where I get to be and connect, and I'm so present, and it's such organic conversations and stuff like that. And my feminine days would also be days where I maybe don't have a ton of calls, or I don't put a lot of things on my to-do list, but maybe I'm like, you know what, I'm going to work on this one project, and I'm allowing myself to just go deep with it and be so present and like in the space of this one project, right? And so it's not like one or the other isn't right or wrong, right? It's seeing like, oh, when am I going to shift into my feminine or shift into my masculine to be most effective for whatever it is that I get to do. And I mean, I would say like, and this isn't like a statistic or anything, but like, I would say most women are like, our default, I think many of us, especially entrepreneurial women, has been like many of us have been so stuck in our masculine, right? Because it produced a lot of one, culturally, that's how we were taught. And it's produced a lot of positive results in our lives too. And so learning to lean into the feminine and to like surrender and trust and like listen to my intuition and my gut and like follow my desires and that kind of stuff over the past year and a half, almost 2 years, really trusting my feminine energy and feeling safe in that and letting that guide me more than my masculine has allowed me to make more money than I've ever made in my whole life and work less than I've ever made in my whole life and feel more aligned in who I am as a woman, not just a business owner, but like as a woman, like in all the ways than I ever have. So I'm like, you know what? I think there's something to this.
You're like, I think I should probably teach other women about this.
Yeah,
this is important. Well, you gave me permission before we started to ask about, a little bit about your divorce. Mm-hmm. And I heard you say like in 2019, you were still married, right?
Yes.
So you went through this transition with all the stuff you've shared with us so far. You went through a lot of this while married, correct?
Yes. Yes. So my ex-husband and I we met when I was 23 years old. So,
oh, wow.
and we were together for 10 years, married for 5. And yeah, that 2019 period, my quote unquote gap year, my depression year, all that kind of stuff. I chose to step back from my business in part because we were dealing with a lot of stuff in our relationship, and I wanted to be able to, and I wasn't being disciplined enough to put boundaries in my own business. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do personal training in person for people. If projects come up with my business, cool, I'll consider them as they come up, but that's not the focus. I wasn't excited about it. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to have good boundaries there too. And I needed to prioritize my mental health and my relationship. And so, yeah, coming out of 2019, my ex and I, we bought a home in the end of 2019. We moved in the week of Christmas 2019, and then, which is the home that I am so grateful that I still get to live in this home and have this home. But yeah, we moved, and so you don't do that, right? You don't buy a house with your then husband if you're like, I'm a maybe, right? I'm like, no, we're doing this. And we bought a home very end of 2019. So March, things shut down. And the end of April, we decided we were getting a divorce.
Wow.
He moved out in July. So I've been single and out in the world as this, Lauren 2.0, I guess, for a little over a year. And
was part of, I mean, I ask very uncomfortable questions.
Do it.
Was part of the unraveling of that relationship the fact that you were having such a deeply transformative internal change yourself, and then you guys weren't like an energetic match anymore?
Yes, very much. And so interestingly, with the feminine masculine balance, and when I say this, I always feel like I need to put a disclaimer, we had a beautiful marriage in so many ways. We are on incredible terms and are able to have a very healthy post-divorce friendship with so much love there. And I think we navigated our divorce as respectfully and beautifully as I could have ever hoped for. And it still fucking sucks, right? Would not recommend. And for us, a lot of the quote unquote issues and stuff were in that energetic balance or lack of balance, where when we met, I was so stuck in my masculine and all that kind of stuff. And my ex was probably more in his feminine, which doesn't, it's so to say this, to explain, it's not like he was a feminine kind of man. He's hunky, all this kind of stuff, very charismatic, all of this. But I occupied that alpha role in our relationship. And so when I started to lean more into my feminine and let go of the masculine, he didn't then step into that space. But also it's not to blame him, because what he didn't know, because I was basically changing the dynamic of our relationship in my own growth. And so that was where so many of our struggles came from, was that masculine feminine power dynamic being off, right? I was looking for him to step in and be that really alpha leader in the relationship, which he hadn't really been and not to say I was super controlling and domineering or anything, but was looking for that. And he didn't know how to step into that space. And so we went through a lot of things where him being okay, well, how do I do this then? And I'm I don't fucking know.
The classic guy line. Well, just tell me what you want me to do.
Yeah. I was not have to tell you what to do.
Exactly. Thank you. It would be that.
Yeah. I was this is one you're going to have to do on your own, because it makes it worse if you ask me. Right. It makes it worse. And so for us, so it was a lot of then figuring that out. And honestly, when we went through our divorce process together, we were we probably never should have got married, which I don't regret any of it because I love who I am and I love my life and where I'm at now and all the lessons that I got to learn to be this version of myself. And like the things that ultimately we divorced over, I can very much trace those back to our dating life, and be like, oh, when that popped up and I thought that was an issue, I should have paid more attention to it. Or when that felt off, like I needed to listen to that more and explore it more. And I don't think that for us, if we had like figured those things out earlier, it would have like quote unquote saved our marriage. I think we would have just ended our marriage sooner.
Yeah.
So it was that energy balance getting thrown off, and that really was like the big thing. And that shows up in so many different ways.
Oh, it shows up in all areas of our life.
Yeah.
If you had still been in your workaholism, in that energy of, doing, do you feel that the divorce would have realistically probably happened at some point, but do you feel it would have been delayed even further because you were so occupied over in one area and not still, not in stillness to think and feel?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it happened. So like, I feel like it's like, oh, so cliche. I had a like COVID divorce, right? And then got a dog, but I do think because like before that, well, my 2019, I was in the gym, like 6 hours a day and stuff, training clients and then working out. And like, I was doing fitness competitions and stuff like that year. And so we weren't as in each other's lives, right? We were very much like doing our own lives. And then we'd be like reconnect on the weekends or like for a couple nights during the week for dinner and stuff like that. And so we were so operating in our own lanes so much of the time that when everything shut down and we were spending so much time together, it made those quote unquote issues so much clearer, right? Like it brought them to the surface more. And in part too, because, I'm doing all the things right that you're supposed to do. Like my husband and I just bought our home together. It's all furnished beautifully. We live in a gorgeous, like multi-million-dollar neighborhood. Everything looks exactly how I want, like all this stuff. My business is taking off. Everything's falling into place just how it's supposed to. And then that made it the relationship piece being out of alignment so much more obvious.
It's like when you remodel a house, like if you remodel the kitchen, but like you're kind of waiting to do the bathrooms. Now your bathrooms look really janky, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I was like, crap. Like this is still like, we did all the things. I got all the, like this beautiful house, all this stuff. And this is still not right. Like this still isn't working. And so much of it for me, like came down to, again, like a lot of worthiness stuff of feeling like, and again, like my ex is one of the best relationships I've ever been in. He's an incredible man, treated me beautifully, like, and was wonderful. And I still like the things that ultimately ended up being deal breakers for me. Like, again, there were like glimpses of that in our dating life, but I was like, no, this is the best relationship I've ever been in. You can't have all the things that you want. You can't have all the things that you want in your partner. And that's to distinguish. You're not going to have every single one of your needs as a human met in one person. That's ridiculous to think that. But you should be very clear on what your non-negotiables are for your partnership and what things you can get elsewhere, right? So like my entrepreneur conversations and that kind of energy, I don't need my person to be an entrepreneur. Yeah, I would prefer that, but not a deal breaker for me. I have so many entrepreneur friends. I can get the entrepreneur crazy bug conversations out, right? But like, what are those things on your non-negotiable list? And I was back when we met and when we got married, even, I was willing to like ignore those because I was like, well, no, I'm not, I will never find better than this. I can't. I think it's possible. I'm ridiculous. I'm unreasonable.
I've said that to myself many times.
Yeah.
But I feel like that is also something that has been I don't know, kind of stuff down us too. Like I've heard that saying many times, right? Like if you're at least, you get 80% of what you want, then you should be happy. I mean, I feel like we get a lot of messaging around that.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. And again, it's there's like the must have and the would like to have, and so I don't think you'll have every single thing on the entire list, but like the must haves, don't freaking ignore those, and don't sacrifice
this is coming from someone fresh off a divorce. So you guys better listen.
They come back to get you.
Listen the hell up. Okay. Cause this is fresh on her mind. You have made some very significant, using the, the word we all hear, pivot. You've made some significant pivots, right? In your personal life. And now you're pivoting with your business into focusing more on teaching, right? This divine feminine, masculine energy. What did you have to do? It's hard for a lot of people to give ourselves permission to do that. It's scary as hell because what even if it's not working, it's still familiar. And to go into the unknown is damn scary. What kind of stuff do you have to do daily to kind of remind yourself, no, it's okay. It's going to be safe to go for this.
Oh, such a good question. And it has been scary, to bring something new to life that's in a completely like different direction than what I've been doing the last several years, which is PR, marketing, visibility, all of that. But it's also been really fun to feel like a beginner, right? And to be building something new. The thing for me that has been the most supportive for this is, so I'm a human design generator, sacral authority generator. So our sacral authority, like, so basically like my gut is like freaking spot on with all the things. If I'm not feeling excited about something, it's a no. And I have to listen to that. And I keep getting reminded of that over and over again over the last few months as I'm pivoting into this new divine feminine and energetics direction, because I'll do the thing of like, well, if I do this, that'll bring in more money faster. So I should just do that. When my gut is like, nope, do the other thing. But then I have to actually like crash and burn with the thing that seems smarter. And so like to illustrate this more, I threw together a very like impromptu women's mastermind this past year. No sales page, no sales calls, nothing. I posted a poll in Instagram, was like, who would want to be mentored by me for 90 days? Tons of interest, locked in a group that I was super excited about, did it. Amazing. I was like, well, shit, I'm going to do this again. And then I decide to launch this again, this mastermind, but like actually do a sales page and actually have like an opt-in and actually do all the things that we are quote unquote supposed to do when we're launching something. And girl, I silent launched this 3 fucking times and nobody signed up.
Wow.
And that was, to me, I was like, and I was detached from the outcome. Yes, I had like specific numbers I wanted to hit and all this kind of stuff, but I was like, but I wasn't getting like emotionally bent out of shape over it. I was like observing. I'm like, interesting. All right, let's try it again. What could I do differently now this time that I'm launching the same thing? And 3 times. And one of my coaches at the time was like, Lauren, she's like, are you all in? And I was like, no. She's like, yeah, I can tell. She's like, well, you can't do things unless you're all in, And I know too, like when my energy is all in on something, it's fucking magical, magnetic.
I mean, you can't fake it. Like you can feel it, right? I can even tell even subjects we talk about, like I can see it through the screen, right? Yeah. Like your energy.
I don't have a good poker face or like
not
energy
really.
Poker
I mean,
face. No.
You do have Botox, as do I. So
I do.
If we didn't, it would be very dangerous out there.
Yeah. And so I had to launch that half-assed 3 times and get 0 enrollments when months before I launched it off a freaking Instagram poll and hit my goal. And I'm like,
Now, were you all in on it energetically when you did the Instagram poll?
Yeah. Yeah, I was
Why
so
were you
excited
all in
about
on it then and not all in on it when you did the sales page?
So it was me like dipping my toe into this pivot. So this new direction with mentoring women. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to step into this. Let's just see what happened. But I also wasn't banking on that to be like some big, I was so detached from what happened with it. And it was so organic and like from my intuition that I think that's what, and I was really excited about it. And I loved the women that were in that group, like love them, and it was so fulfilling for me to do that. And though the big difference that I noticed when I was half-assed, quote unquote, launching it, even with a sales page, even with like free masterclasses and all this kind of stuff, I was already planning for when I wasn't going to do it anymore. So I was like, yeah. And so I noticed that I was like, oh, what's the fastest way? And how I did this got really masculine with it. I said, what's the fastest way to add an additional $20,000 a month into my business? Oh, it's going to be 5 women at this price per month. Done. Easy. 5 women. Duh. Right. And so rather than the membership at like $100 a month, that's going to need a lot more women. So I'm like, dude, let's just go with the 5. We'll lock in that extra $20K a month. So I was so driven just by the like end result numbers of it, less by the excitement of what it actually was. And I was already thinking, well, maybe I'll offer this for 6 months and then I'm not going to do it anymore, because the end game is not to do a bunch of these.
Because you really didn't want to do it.
Yeah. And I would find that I wouldn't talk about it until the very end of the day. And I'm like, okay, we know what's happened. We've done this before. And so,
wow.
And so I was like, all right, we're not going to do that again, and decided we're just going to jump in and launch the women's membership. And that's what I should have gone with instead of the mastermind. And
she is, you guys, this is opening up in September. Now, she doesn't have a sales page done yet, probably by the time you hear this. But what she's doing instead, which is following the exact example she just said, intuitively, she's like, you know what? Just have your people DM me on Instagram.
Yeah.
And let me know that they want to be, a founding member of her membership. And you can hit up Lauren Salaun at Lauren Salaun, Lauren. And her last name's spelled funky, which of course I had to have her tell me how to pronounce it, but it's Salaun. Now, take a screenshot of this episode if you appreciated it, if you loved it, support the show. Let us know that you vibed, the honesty, that you laughed. And tag me at ProjectME with Tiffany. Tag Lauren at Lauren, Salaun. If you're multitasking, which I know you are, you can just tag me and then I'll make sure to repost it and tag her. But I will also have her link to her Instagram in the show notes. So if you just swipe up, you can go there, vibe her content and see if that membership, is a good fit for you. If you feel like it's a place where it's going to, my guess is, without even knowing that much about it, it's going to help you stay more in your feminine when all of you are being focused on being in that energy and balancing those energies more, just by having it at the top of mind, accountability, being under like-minded women. Did I sell that good?
You sold it great. Yeah. It's a lot of the inner work to produce the outer results, as cheesy as that sounds, but like the energetic work and the foundational work with inspired, aligned action. Cause I'm not about just like, sit back and see what comes to you. No, right? Like then, okay, that's part of the equation. But yes, we take freaking aligned action too. So yes, you said it. It's designed to support women in like owning their truth, using their voice, standing out in the world, expressing themselves, getting into like massive alignment and showing up as the most like authentic, abundant version of themselves in the world, and making like good money from their zone of genius and being able to, produce more results with less effort.
Because that is one of those beliefs, even when she's saying it, the first thought in my head, because of all the programming I've had, is, oh yeah, that sounds nice. Like if I really relaxed into my feminine, I would end up on my 600-pound life. Like that's what that's what comes up in my head. And then I have to discipline myself to go a step further and go, okay, hold on a second. Is that absolutely true? Like, would you hit up the white cheddar popcorn to the point of that? Probably not. Maybe a bag or two. Maybe a bag or two.
Maybe like a weekend of that life. Right. And then you're like, okay, this is enough.
There's a moment, but I do like the white cheese popcorn with wine combo. It's very satisfying for me.
That does sound very nice.
It is satisfying. So last question for you. What have you done during these COVID times as a single woman? Like how has that been? Like, have you been on like the prowl on the dating apps?
On the prowl. I'll tell you, there was a moment. So my ex and I had 2 months of living together in the house as he was looking for his own place, which was like at the one time beautiful and healing for us and excruciating too. But there was one time where I flung myself onto the bed and had like a little temper tantrum because I was like, I don't want an online date and the world is closed. How am I going to meet somebody? I might as well just adopt 10 dogs. Like that was like what happened. And of course he's like, you're ridiculous. You'll be fine. So jumped into the online dating space for the first time ever in my life. And I have a love-hate relationship with dating apps because they feel, one, it takes a bit of time and energy and swiping for me, at least, to like find someone I actually want to like spend time and energy with. And so it kind of replaces like mindless social media scrolling. So I don't really like to be on them too much. And I have made some beautiful connections over the past year through apps as well. So yeah, I would say that I've been pretty much killing the dating situation over the past year and I've had a lot of fun. So yeah, dating apps, like give them a whirl, try different ones. Yeah. I mean, this opens up a whole new conversation, but with
it really is. It's a whole new thing. But like, I always make sure I ask the questions that I know you guys want me to ask and get pissed if I don't ask. And so I know you guys are thinking that like, oh God, yeah. Like, what does that really look like?
It has been such a powerful lesson for me too, in getting really clear on what I want and what I don't want, establishing boundaries, not being a people pleaser, right? If I have a FaceTime with somebody and I have no desire to see them in person, I'm not going on a date with them just because I feel bad for saying no. I literally immediately after the FaceTime date, I'm like, hey, you know what? You seem great. Not feeling it. Thank you though. Like I'm so radically honest. Like,
hey, your credit score is a little off for me. Bye.
Oh gosh. Well, and interestingly, I did not know you were a Virgo, but same. So you can imagine.
Oh,
like what it's like to date them. Like
discerning is the nice word. We're very discerning.
And like, that hurt your feelings? I was like, was that too honest? Am I too direct? Deal with it. Like, don't goodbye.
I'm dying. Oh my God. Yeah. You're hysterical. This is such a great conversation. You guys take a screenshot, share this episode, tag me at ProjectME with Tiffany, tag Lauren Salaun at Lauren Salaun. Let us know if you guys love the episode. Go say hi to her on Instagram. She answers her DMs. I can vouch for that. And I mean, follow her shenanigans because they're quite entertaining. I mean, we need more like fun, entertaining people on the interwebs. And so I really appreciate you coming on. I'm so glad we connected. We have several mutual friends, and I think it's weird we've never connected, but it was supposed to happen at this time.
Yes, exactly. This has been lovely. Thank you so much. This is so much fun. So I've had a blast. So thank you for having me.
Bye, love. If you enjoyed this podcast, please write a 5-star review on iTunes. Not only will this make me super happy, but it will allow more listeners to find our special show. Simply help me help others.